Reaching a $100,000 net worth is an exhaustive grind. For most, it represents a decade of scraping and saving, waiting for a brokerage app to finally display that six-figure balance. The billionaire investor Charlie Munger described this as the hardest $100,000 a person will ever earn. He argued that once you reach this threshold, the momentum of the money begins to do the heavy lifting for you. The shift is purely mathematical. At an average 8% return, a $100,000 portfolio generates $8,000 in a single year, roughly $667 every month. Your capital is now producing the equivalent of a part-time salary without requiring a single hour of your labor. Yet this specific moment of success often triggers a series of defensive or impulsive choices that stall the very growth an investor worked nearly 20 years to achieve. Crossing six figures represents a transition into a new phase of compounding. The physics of the game have shifted, and the strategy that got you here is rarely the one that will keep the momentum going. The primary obstacle is a phenomenon known as the summit effect. For years, the goal of hitting $100,000 provided a rigid structure for your discipline and a clear target to move toward. When you finally touch that number, that structural goal vanishes. This creates a psychological vacuum that the brain instinctively attempts to fill with immediate, often reckless action. To fill this void, investors typically default to three behaviors: upgrading their lifestyle for a dopamine hit, chasing speculative investments for stimulation, or retreating into the perceived safety of cash. At this stage, the biological impulse to do something poses a more immediate threat to the portfolio than a downturn in the broader economy. The first archetype is the spender. After a decade of lean living, they view their $100,000 balance as permission to make a series of small, defensible lifestyle upgrades. A newer car payment adds $540 a month. A nicer apartment adds $400. Combined with a few extra dinners out, monthly spending quietly climbs by $1,100. The opportunity cost is staggering. That $1,100 a month is $13,200 a year. Invested at 8% for 20 years, it grows into a secondary pile worth over $600,000. Every dollar of that represents the raw fuel the compounding snowball needs to maintain momentum. Wealth is rarely destroyed by a single catastrophic mistake. It is usually bled dry by 100 small, justifiable yeses. The gambler experiences a different trap: overconfidence. Reaching $100,000 can make an investor feel invincible, leading them to believe they've solved the market. Bored with the 8% returns of an index fund, they move foundational capital into speculative bets or leveraged options, seeking a faster route forward. Leverage uses borrowed capital to amplify potential returns. When the market moves up, this creates the illusion of genius. But leverage works with equal violence in reverse. When the market turns, it multiplies losses just as fast, erasing years of savings in days. Your first $100,000 serves as the foundation for everything that follows. Betting that foundation to build a second floor faster risks leaving you with nothing to stand on. The hoarder reacts to the milestone with fear. Terrified of a market crash, they move their entire six-figure portfolio into a standard savings account. This provides a sense of absolute security. The balance never fluctuates, and the investor no longer faces the anxiety of seeing red numbers. However, this perfectly safe strategy introduces a completely different kind of loss: the silent, permanent erosion caused by inflation. This diagram tracks the impact of a 3% inflation rate. While the $100,000 balance stays the same, the portfolio loses $3,000 in actual buying power every single year. For long-term capital, the certainty of inflation makes sitting in cash a high-risk strategy. A temporary market correction eventually recovers. The erosion of purchasing power is permanent. The successful alternative is simply the automator. Upon reaching $100,000, they purposefully change almost nothing about their spending or their strategy. They prioritize clearing any high-interest debt, such as credit cards. Paying off a 20% interest balance provides a guaranteed, risk-free return that no market investment can reliably match. They maximize tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k or Roth IRA. These compounding shelters allow the snowball to grow untouched by annual tax drags. They also maintain a separate 3 to 6 month cash emergency fund. This shield ensures they never liquidate investments during a crisis. Finally, they solve the summit effect by immediately defining their next milestone, whether it is $250,000 or $1 million. A new, named goal prevents the psychological vacuum from leading to impulsive spending. The most effective long-term results are often the product of the most boring systems. By automating their strategy, they ensure the math continues to work without their constant interference. A moment of wonder. A six-figure portfolio marks a distinct transition in the math of compounding. At this scale, the market's annual movements begin to exert more influence on your net worth than your bi-weekly paycheck. The journey to $100,000 required active hustle and manual savings, but moving beyond this point requires a different discipline: passive patience. Many hardworking investors fail here because they continue to use their hustle muscles. They try to control and manipulate a system that now primarily rewards the ability to get out of its way. For a typical earner, this milestone is the mathematical crossover where the market's returns start rivaling their own yearly contributions. This is often the final stage where personal hustle can reliably outpace the portfolio's internal growth. Durable wealth is built by those who can tolerate the boredom of the middle years. The ultimate law of the six-figure milestone is simple: set the system, name the next number, and remain entirely still.